Well, welcome to WMBF News this week. Is it election day yet? Not quite yet. And we're going to talk about the House District 56 race. It's one of those races out there, including House District 105, that has petition candidates on the ballot. So you can't vote party if you want to get those petition candidates the credit. Joining me for House District 56, those candidates are Mike Ryle. We're happy to have you here with us today. Thanks for coming in. Also happy to have Dennis DiSabato here. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's start just in general. And many of the voters out there realize that the 56 is the new district, newly drawn to include Carolina Forest. But to give people a little bit about you and your perspective, let's start with you, Mike Ryle. Of what do you hope that the voters really realize if they're coming to consider you?
I bring a lot of experience to the table. I've got 40 years working in various capacities. I worked in various states and worked my way up from the bottom of a company up through the top levels. And the experience that comes with that, I think, is invaluable. I've worked in different agencies, basically worked with PUCO, NLRB, NRCs. I worked in a executive role with the company. So between mergers, acquisitions, I had a lot of background. I think is very valuable here.
And currently a business owner, would we say, in the Myrtle Beach area for a number of years?
Correct, for the last 6 years.
Okay. And we'll touch on this a little bit more, but I guess as far as the voters go out there, why do you want to represent District 56 for the Carolina Forest and beyond area?
Well, as you stated, this is a brand new area. We have a unique group of people that have come together that we're representing. And as we've been out traveling, as I've worked in this area for the last 7 years, we have a unique set of problems that comes with all the growth, all the traffic, being a tourist area. And we have areas that have developed very quickly, and we have other areas that are underdeveloped. And we need to figure out how to make sure we represent everybody and do the best we can for the people that we elect, that we serve, I'm sorry.
Sure. And of course, Dennis DiSabato, tell us a little bit about you and your experience here in the Myrtle Beach area.
Thank you, Mike. I want to thank the news station for having us here today. I am a real estate attorney. I do primarily transactional work in my practice. I've been here since 2006 when I started my law practice right before the real estate bubble burst. And so it's been difficult, but we've done a lot of good work and kept the lights on over that period of time. I have a lot of experience running business and being involved in small family business. My parents have been business owners for 35 years. From the time I was old enough to work, I've been dealing with and watching my parents deal with the issues that small business faces. And I've been very involved in that community. Like Mike said, we do have a lot of problems, and through the last 4 or 5 years, I've been addressing almost every problem that the Carolina Forest area has specifically been dealing with. And I think I have a vast amount of experience from a grassroots level, giving a voice to that community when it had none before. So that's why I'm running for the race.
Okay. A number of issues, of course, in the Carolina Forest area, schools, of course, being one of them. I'd imagine as both of you have been out hitting the streets and getting feedback, we were talking before this show, the 3 elementary schools feeding into 1 middle school. Eventually, you need more growth. What are your ideas, your perspectives, should you be elected as a state representative, to help with the schools?
Well, I think what we need to do is find a way to eliminate the one-size-fits-all tax structure that we have currently in our state. We need to find a way that generates income for our local governments so that they can use it in the ways that they need to use it. And I think we need to try and find a way to eliminate the need to add a penny to the sales tax every time something needs to be improved or built upon. So I'd like to see whoever goes to Columbia fight to have, some of the money that we're sending to Columbia come back to the community so we can use it on the things that we need locally. And
that was, I think, part of your platforms is a sales tax reform idea. Is that accurate as well, too? From 6% maybe to a 4% tax across the state, you're thinking?
That's correct, yeah. I think that if we can eliminate some of the sales and use tax exemptions that currently exist in the tax code, then what you'll do is broaden the tax base, and in which case you can then reduce the sales tax that's being charged to everybody.
Okay, and your thoughts, Mike, on schools and how we accommodate this growing population that Carolina Forest is becoming?
Well, the area's going to keep growing, and obviously we're going to have all the issues with the roads, the infrastructure, water, et cetera, that we're going to talk about a little bit. We're going to need more schools, and we've seen that new elementary schools every other year since I've been down here, and it's still not enough. So we need to have the money here to keep growing. Unfortunately, we send a lot of our money out of this area. As a business owner, I write a check every 20th of the month, and it goes to Columbia, and a lot of that never sees its way back here. So we need to fight to keep more of that back here in our area, and we need to do some long-range planning. Along with the growth in the area and the schools, we've got the issue where there's getting in and out. I mean, I think of the schools and what would happen if we ever had a major emergency and we had to evacuate these kids? How would we do that? And so there's a lot of issues tied to it. And rather than just keep filling the void every time we see an immediate need, we need to start planning long term. And I think that's one thing we're lacking in right now.
As far as the Conway water situation, this is a tedious issue, people paying much more than they feel like they should righteously. What would be your idea or perspective of, should you be elected, legislation you could pass to change things so that customers wouldn't be paying so much for the water?
Well, I come from a utility background, and if a business gets out of control, especially when there's no competition, government does step in. And I think we're in a situation here where government needs to take a look at stepping in. But it's not just the water rates. If we look at what just happened with Santee Cooper, you know, the small businesses, the homeowners, we're all struggling right now. We just increased our rates on the homeowners and 10% on the business owners. So it's just not the water, it's utilities in general, and taking a look at how to make that work. When you have a monopoly, sometimes you have to say, hey, you're getting out of line and we need some help here. So we should approach those businesses first, talk to them about it, and let them understand that if we can't get resolution here locally, we do need some sort of regulation to control that.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on the water? How would we deal with it? Should you be elected?
Well, first I'd like to just mention that of the two of us, one of us has actually approached the city of Conway and fought for the changes that we need with regard to the water rates. I went to City Council numerous times on behalf of the Carolina Forest community that's being charged these egregious rates, and I fought against it. I've had meetings with Bill Graham and Alice Lawson, and I looked them directly in the eye and I told them that what they're doing is wrong. And it's not fair to the people who live there. Mike Ryle wasn't there at any of those meetings. As far as my plan for the water rates specifically, what we need to do is find a way to amend the code, and I would propose a bill that would reduce the amount of money that a municipality can charge to the customers that are outside of their city limits, and then put a sunset provision on it so that once the infrastructure cost that they're explaining away the increased rate on is paid for, that provision kicks in and they can no longer charge that increased rate. And that's what I would do if I were elected. I'd go to Columbia and immediately propose that type of legislation.
And the meeting that you have, do you feel that was a productive meeting, at least explaining to them that this doesn't seem right or fair, or do you feel like it was just them listening and not really responding?
They were listening and not responding. I think once you give government, municipality, at any level, the ability to charge a fee, which let's call it what it really is a tax, that it's difficult to take that away from a government or a municipality. And so in order to do it at a local level, we're going to have to take action at a state level.
Do either of you feel like it's such a big national issue, too, about over-regulation? Now, both of you aren't actually running as Republicans, though you would have been if you wouldn't be petition candidates. So again, when you go to vote at District 56 for this and District 105, a lot of those candidates are petition candidates. So they're not going to have an R or a D by their name. We talk about regulation. Would regulation play a role in this water situation, this issue, do you feel like? Would there need to be more regulation?
Well, I think that's always a challenge. I think we're over-regulated as it is now. I mean, if you take a look at the last several years just in my business, Obamacare, we've had issues there. That's going to increase our costs. Okay, it's going to come down on businesses, it's going to come down on families. If you take a look at what happened with just the electric rates just recently, okay, that's another adder that we've had. If you take it unemployment, okay, they changed that to a scale of a sliding scale of 0 to 11.5%. So all these things are regulations that come in, and so we have to be careful. But when you have a monopoly, that's where you have to take a look and say, you know, what is fair, what is unfair here? And I think that's where this issue comes up. It's an issue of fairness when you look around and say, here's what we're charging in one location, here's what we're charging in another, and is that fair? And I believe most of the time if you do sit down with individuals and let them know what your options are, you can get some changes made without regulating, but it's getting the parties together. And Dennis, respectfully, you know, when you start making statements, as I've heard you making, that you were there and I wasn't, there's plenty of things that I've done where I've been working on where you're not there. And I think that that's not the place we need to take this.
What specifically?
What specifically? Obamacare. Did you go to Charleston and to Greenville and up into Washington and work on that?
No.
I don't know the answers to that. I don't know the
reason why, Mike, is because
please.
I'm not running for U.S. Congress. I'm running for State House. I'm trying to work on local issues for our community. And that's why I wasn't
I got to
working
tell
on
you,
this
as a
issue.
business owner, if you don't think Obamacare is going to affect us,
I know it affects us.
then you should be involved in it.
I'm doing what I can for my community, Mike. That's what I'm doing.
And we're going to talk more about these issues, and there is passion, obviously, here. Both these gentlemen want to represent District 56. Stay with WMBF News this week when we come back. A lot more of the issues to talk about. Welcome back to District 56 discussion for the new House seat, including Carolina 4's Mike Ryle is here, as well as Dennis DiSabato, talking a little bit about the issues. And in the commercial break, you mentioned some concerns about integrity and what people say. And you mentioned some things about, look, I'm working for the local issues, the water meeting that I was at. You accused Mike of not being there. Mike said I was here talking about Obamacare. Both of you have a passion. I don't argue that. It's amazing that you're on the ballot. Both of you were kicked off of the ballot for a lot of the snafu that happened with hundreds of people throughout South Carolina. So you are here on the ballot, District 56, as well as House District 105. You got to vote for the petition candidate. You're not going to see a party by each of these people's names. A number of issues I do want to talk about. What are you concerned with as far as what happens next in this election that you hope that the voters understand? And I'll ask you as well too, Dennis.
I think the biggest thing, we can sit here and we understand there are issues with infrastructure, with schooling, the education. We need to bring jobs into this area, and how we do that, there are going to be a lot of different solutions, a lot of different ideas. But you know, when I hear that kind of comment, I step back and say, you know, we need to elect somebody who has integrity, honesty, who the voters know that their word means what it says. And to misrepresent things, that I've done this and I've done that, when that's not what's happened. I mean, I'm looking at, you know, Dennis's latest letter he sent out raising funds. Talks about what he did with the library, the rec center, widening the road. And yet when you talk to Liz Gilland and others that were involved, they say he was nowhere around when all that happened. That happened years ago. But to sit here and say that you pushed for it and were part of that is totally misrepresenting. Then I deal with the issues that we went through with a nice little piece Dennis put in the paper. Again.
Well, let's start with some of these issues first. You would feel that you've invested in some of these I-73, 501 widening?
Well, no, I've never been involved with the I-73 program in any way. But when I was the president of the Carolina 4 Civic Association and we were having traffic that was backed up to Covington, you know, I went to the INR meetings with other members of my board, and we fought for these improvements. I've had numerous conversations with Steve Gosnell and Andy Markunis. You could call them and ask them if that's accurate. And that was part of the reason why we got the front end of Carolina Forest Boulevard widened. I'm not saying I'm solely the reason for it, but I fought. And when I was fighting and going to these meetings, Mike Ryle wasn't there. When parents were calling me about their concerns over the school realignment plan, I went to the school board meetings. I worked with our leaders on the school board. I worked with the administration, and I said there's ways that we can better utilize the space that we already have, and we don't need to bus kids out of the Carolina Forest area. And I worked on that issue, and we prevented it from happening. The Conway water is another issue that I worked on. The Library and Rec Center, I was there with the president of the Carolina Forest Civic Association at the time. That was Tony McDonald at that time. But I was there with him fighting to make sure that that infrastructure project got done. Was I the only one who did it? No, absolutely not. And was I always successful? No. But the one thing that you can never question is that when I had an opportunity to fight and give a voice to the community in which we both live, I was there more often than Mike Ryle was.
That's his perspective. I know that you're passionate as well too about the issues that you believe in, but the argument that you kind of brought up is this is what you're putting out, Dennis is putting out. You feel like it's a misstatement of the issues or the facts? Well,
up until this point in the campaign, I have listened to a lot of accusations and tried not to respond, to run a positive campaign. And I see someone trying to take credit for a lot of things that he, you know, the way he represents them is incorrect. And if Marion Foxworth was here or Liz Gillen was here, they would tell you that. And so I think people need to start talking to these people and asking them just what was Dennis's role. And we all go to meetings, okay? I've been involved with the school realignment, reapportionment. I've worked on all that stuff. We've written letters, we've talked to people, we've made phone calls. And so we both work on those issues. They're very important issues. I have 3 children in the school system, okay? I understand very well how difficult this has been. When I first came down here, there were trailers lined up all over at the end of the road for the kids, okay? So we did fight hard to get that changed. And the money for the widening of the road he says he worked on, that was done by Foxworth before, and that was all settled before he ever got involved. So to take credit for those things, I think we need to step back and ask the people who were here doing the work just what his role was if he wants to take credit for it. I'm not taking credit for anything I didn't do.
I'm not taking credit for anything. I'm saying that I was vocal and stood up for the community on these issues.
And you have no idea what I've done or didn't do there.
Because you weren't around. You weren't around to show us.
I was around. And I am out in the public. I've done more for the schools and the churches in this local community financially than you will dream of doing.
Well, that's not
just
true.
the way it
Mike,
is.
Mike, listen, I think it's wonderful that you've done a lot of charitable work in this community. You've done a lot of work with faith-based organizations, and I think that's admirable, and I think it's wonderful that you do that. But, you know, I've done a lot of work charitably in this community as well. As the president of Coastal Carolina Sertoma Club, I've raised close to $200,000 for local area charities, from Fostering Hope to Autism Advocacy Foundation, Grand Strand Boys and Girls Club, the Miracle League. I mean, you name it, we've been involved in those projects.
Sure.
I've given hundreds of hours of my time to local charities. I was working on a Habitat for Humanity build right in the middle of our district off Ronald McNair Boulevard. You know, I think it's very important for people to give back to their community, and I've been doing that since I was a teenager.
And I don't think that anybody would argue that both of you, as again, and I repeat myself, but are not passionate about the community in the area. I think everybody would agree with that. And I'm not going to be able to settle some of the concerns here as well either, but I do want people at home watching to realize where you stand on some of the issues. I'm kind of looking for a divisor. Is there one issue that you feel maybe different on that maybe some of the voters might look at? And it may not be the case. You might both feel similarly. I-73 is another huge one. At the debates, infrastructure is huge and critical. What's your stance on I-73? We've been talking about the money needed forever.
Sure.
Does the state representative position have a positive role in that?
I think I-73 has to be